we're just going to kick things straight off, but I guess we'll just start with our discussion beforehand where Shakes was about to say, I'll just FUD L2. So that's going to be his contribution for the episode. I'm going to give it straight over to Little Perp. He's going to talk about
Shakes.
What?
Sorry. I pulled up our YouTube stream to change the thumbnail. Go ahead.
It's all right. Go, Chris. I can't. I murdered the intro, dude. Murdered it.
Yeah, of all your intros, that was definitely the worst one. So I'm glad to take over. I think today we're going to be talking about L2s and basically the game theory of when an L2 and also DApps would think about basically decoupling from a layer one and forming their own layer one and like achieving their own sovereignty. So there's been some Twitter conversations about it recently, and TJ and I were talking about it today, so we thought it'd be fun to talk about on the pod. I guess before we get started, we should just basically add a disclaimer about our biases. Lucas knows nothing about L2s. TJ works for Maker, which is a monolithic chain, and he's also a huge Cosmos bull. Shake just will only pump Sol, and
I'm actually I used to be biased because I owned a lot of Atom, but it's worth 0 now, so I'm unbiased. I'm biased to Sol. Yeah, my Atom bags are basically 0, so I have no bag bias.
And I'm building on the Solana monolithic blockchain, so also don't love L2s. So with that in mind, we can kick off kind of the conversation. So I guess what's been bringing this up is layer twos. Basically, they are what end users are interacting with, and so they control the demand side and the user flow. But they ultimately still have to pay rents to the L1 that they're layered on top of. Most likely, this is Ethereum. So the question is, what would need to happen for an L2 to basically stop building on top of or stop settling to the layer one and instead to basically become their own layer one? And I guess we can just kind of talk about some of the trade-offs that might go into play here. The most obvious one is that a layer two basically is paying the L1 for security. So ETH, because the network is worth so much and it's right now a proof of work system and the future proof of stake, it's the biggest proof of stake chain. So you can trust that basically it can't get 51% attacked, or I guess it's like 66% for proof of stake. And therefore, like you want to settle down there because your state of your DApp is protected. But the question is, like, if a L2 leaves, can it be secure enough such that it can basically warrant not paying the rent to the L1? Does that kind of breakdown make sense, Teach? So I think that is really the crux of, I think, kind of the trade-off for L2s as well as DApps. And the other, I guess, thing for a DApp, which we started talking about L2s, but kind of the same game theory applies for a DApp, where if end users are coming to a DApp, and the DApp is paying rent to the L1, at what point would a DApp try to start its own chain? And I think the additional point in terms of security that the L1 provides is on a monolithic chain, you basically get composability out of the box. And so to what extent do you want that synchronous composability that you get building on an L1 versus if you're on an L2 or even using something like IBC where you're bridging between chains, you do get asynchronous composability. So in addition to the security that an L1 gets you, how much do you value the composability
you
that you get?
Some of these terms. Asynchronous, blah blah blah. Dude, we got to dumb it down for the audience here.
Okay, I'm gonna assume that our audience is very intelligent, but that I should still explain it anyway, so not to insult our audience. But yeah, synchronous basically means that like in one transaction, you can have like two dApps interact with one another. Where asynchronous would mean like if they're happening on two chains, you might do one transaction on one chain. You need to wait to propagate the message to another chain, do something there, and then it can get relayed back to the first chain. So it's just this idea of like something synchronous if it can happen at the same time, and asynchronous if you have to like basically wait for something to happen before the one who you're composing with, like the composer. I guess asynchronous is there's a composer and the composer needs to wait until the compose does his thing, or can it just happen all at once?
Yeah.
So
I mean, what you basically have is we're describing the difference between something that happens immediately in a single transaction, and when you want to do a thing, it doesn't happen immediately in a single transaction. Two different things have to be done in different places, or it's just a little bit slower and messier.
yeah, so to some extent, it's a similar question to like why do Web 2 companies pay rent to Amazon to run on AWS, or why do companies, or why does any entity not just like vertically integrate all the way through the whole stack? And it's usually because they literally just can't actually do that themselves cheaper. And so I think kind of the same framing is like, the composability piece is kind of obvious. If you're your own chain, it's going to be really hard to compose synchronously. And if you're not your own chain, then like, can you actually provide enough security that your users trust you? And I guess security here is a little bit of a weird term, because usually you think of security as like losing your keys or like, hacks. But here it's more like economic security of like, is the state of the chain not like manipulatable?
Yeah. It's security here is really censorship resistance.
And so did you come to a decision?
Do I have a decision? No, I don't.
You would obviously build on a fully composable monolithic chain.
Well, I guess so. One interesting thing is much easier as a dApp to get started on a monolithic chain. Similarly, as an L2, it's easier to get started. Like if you try to start an L2 and you're settling to layer 1, it might be easier to get bootstrap it than if you like just build a whole new layer 1 from scratch. So I think most new projects will basically try to leverage the existing systems to get started. And then if they reach enough scale, then these trade-offs make more sense, right? So like if you're just getting started, you probably shouldn't try to build your own layer 1. Like you're probably not going to work. So, and it kind of comes back to DYDX, right? Like they started on ETH, then they did into L2, and now they're doing their own chain. And it's because they have they have one of the bigger, I guess, consumer channels of any DeFi project.
Yeah, so I think that point is right. I think we talked a little bit about it last week, how building on an L1 is sort of like training wheels, right? Like you can spin up your infrastructure very quickly. There's this existing consensus engine and security engine. It all works out of the box. You just build on top of it. Great. So this is why I think for something like IBC or the Cosmos ecosystem, which brands itself as, we are a domain where you can spin up your own sovereign blockchain. You can design everything from soup to nuts, and you can vertically integrate. But it's for this very reason that for a new company, it is so much easier right now to spin up your application on an existing monolithic chain, that the most important thing that IBC can do going forward is two things. One is market themselves so that new developers, as they enter the ecosystem, understand that even exists and is an option. That historically is something that IBC has been very bad at, right? By virtue of it being sort of this, conglomeration with no kind of central team running things like Solana, there's not really like a cohesive personality that people know about. The other piece is, if it's currently so much easier to spin up your application on a monolithic chain, what IBC really needs to do is, make sure that these out of the box sort of tools that allow people to go from 0 to 1 are really, really good. And I actually think historically they've done that well, right? They have the Cosmos SDK, which allows you to basically build with a set of tools, with a toolkit that simplifies things. And then the Tendermint BFT, Byzantine Fault Tolerance, which is the consensus engine that if you so choose, you can use that out of the box, right? And so I think to the extent that like IBC and that ecosystem can improve the process of going from zero, nothing, to having a thing and working, then that probably erodes the monolithic thesis even more so. But I think to just return, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say. I think, when Chris and I were talking today, even like when, on Twitter, the reason you don't want to go to an IBC or your own L1 or, some place that's not the monolithic L1 is this idea around security, right? And security basically means, like Chris said, it has nothing to do with vulnerability or the keys, although those things are important. It more so has to do with what amount of value does a malevolent party need to get their hands on in order to change the state of the chain against the wishes of kind of the validators, the other validators, the decentralized validators. How easy is it to censor that chain, right? And so when you have Ethereum and it's, I don't know, guys, what's the market cap of Ethereum these days? Like 300 billion or something?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
So you have to, 150 whatever billion on a proof of stake chain when it goes proof of stake to be able to censor that network. Whereas if you go to if DYDX is going to Cosmos and someone gets, some smaller amount such that they can 51% attack the network, that might be easier. But I guess the question I have for the group is this idea of security we throw around a lot, right? This is secure, this is unsecure because this has less value. This is the Nakamoto coefficient of this. But when you guys think of leaving a monolithic chain, like what other kind of definitions of security do you guys think are sort of important that maybe get like underreported or not really focused on?
I don't know, bro. That's a really good question. I think it brings into. All right. Well, let me just ask you a question first while I try and think of an answer to your question because I really don't know, which would be
classic cop out.
What
you can tell we did so much preparation.
Yeah, this. Exactly. What is the bridging experience like on IBC versus on like Ethereum and like a layer bridging from like Ethereum to a layer 2?
Ooh, this is actually a good point because another reason not to go to a new chain is because it's a shittier UX for your users. Yeah. Like that's kind of the part of the reason people are. I've heard that someone responded on my Twitter today saying like the UX of basically moving between all these chains on Cosmos is like not great. And like they'd rather like maybe a user would rather be on a monolithic chain.
That's what I was gonna say. That's the only thing that I really know about. Like in the security for me, like as like an idiot, is just do people that I trust say it's secure? That's like, if I'm being honest, that's like pretty much all I think about. But then the main thing I'm thinking about is like, is this usable? Like, is it fun? Is there like some app that's bringing liquidity in users?
Yeah. I mean, that is so two things. Like one is if the UX on a chain is clunky, and it causes some portion of transactions to fail because users don't know what to do or where to send their funds. That's another element of security that's important. Obviously, it's kind of a fringe case, but what I will say is I've heard a lot of FUD around Keplr, the native IBC wallet, being garbage. I actually found the process of learning to use Keplr really, really simple. I think this conversation becomes like a little bit confounding because when you ask someone about the UX, like they're having to learn a new chain. So naturally they're going to be like, this sucks to try to learn how to use this new thing. But that's not really the question, right? The question is when a user is in the ecosystem, right, and they're up to speed, say they're 3 out of 5 literate in Ethereum and they're 3 out of 5 literate in Keplr and IBC, which of those experiences is smoother? So on IBC, I actually think I prefer Keplr to MetaMask. I prefer, or at least I did before, I preferred Phantom, which is Solana's sort of blue chip wallet, to both. But I think on IBC, in my experience, it's been fairly easy to navigate between different sovereign chains. I mean, if it weren't, I would say that might be the single biggest bear indicator for IBC. The whole shtick is IBC is built to be sort of an interoperability standard for Osmosis and Regen and Juno network and all this stuff, right? And so if that weren't working all that well, I would be fairly bearish. But actually, we were talking before about this idea of asynchronous activity, asynchronous transactions, right? Communicate between I don't know, like an L2 and Ethereum or two L2s, you have to do multiple hops to get something done, which introduces like UX issues, introduces vulnerability issues. But actually, this year, I don't know if it's live, maybe someone else does, but IBC, which is inter-blockchain communication, you can think about it as interoperability standard built over in Cosmos. They're introducing this idea of interchain accounts. And the idea of interchain accounts is you can basically have a single account as a user. So imagine you're in your Kepler wallet, right? You've got all your tokens up. You have a single account that can speak to multiple sovereign chains on IBC at once. So you can have something happen on Osmosis and happen on Juno at the same time because your single wallet has an IBC literate account and multiple chains, which I always thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And well, first off, TJ, stop shilling IBC and Atom and everything on here. It's not appropriate. But second off, so all right, but that makes me think like, all right, long term, that's probably a structure that most things move towards. But like, because that is the whole value proposition, is the interoperability and like the fact that you can build your own chain and have it connected. It only really works once it's like fully functional and smooth and like transparent and clear. But right now, Ethereum has just attracted enough, and this is all speculation, they've just attracted enough like mass that it's not that much better, or it's probably about the same as it is on Ethereum. So people would just still prefer to operate on Ethereum.
Definitely.
I also think so. We turned into talking about how like, oh well, you have this interoperability on Cosmos because that's what T likes. But we also started with like, and I just realized this of, okay, in Adapt, basically moving to then doing its own chain, maybe making its own app chain using Cosmos is like one thing. And then there's another thing of an L2, which settles down to the layer 1. Basically, the L2 just cutting off, settling to the layer 1, and like the users don't even know, right? And so I think Adapt moving to its own chain is actually, there's a lot more friction there, and it's a lot harder because maybe the users aren't going to follow you to your new chain. But for a layer 2, if they have sufficient amount of users and the users don't really care, it actually seems more likely that they would just cut off the link to the layer 1.
That's kind of how I feel about Matic. Like Matic has a shit ton of users, right? I don't know the number, but it's a lot, right? And Matic has they just onboard directly, like they have integrations with a lot of the major exchanges, and like they have reasons, even if it's just Ponzi games, like they have reasons that people are going on Matic, right? They have reasons users are going there. But I kind of feel like that. I'm like, well, I mean, Matic is an example where it's more of a side chain, like we were talking about before. But like, what's the benefit to Matic of like even associating with ETH? At a certain point, like I don't see it.
Yeah, the benefit to so Matic has been, I think, in many ways a wild success. They've executed well. Their BD team is unparalleled. They've found a way to have a lot of devs building, shipping quickly. It's India based, which I think has its own tailwinds. I think to answer your question, Shake, the only reason why something like, or one of the reasons I should say, why something like Polygon Matic wouldn't, declare autonomy, secede, is this idea of inheriting Ethereum security, right? So Matic's Nakamoto coefficient, I think they have 11 validators. So I think you need 3 to 4 of those to be corrupt for all of the value to be able to effectively be censored for the chain to either fork or for some sort of vulnerability to happen. And so to really answer the question, I think you only care if your users care, and it seems like they don't.
That's actually a great answer, I think, and I think I totally agree, because I feel like, Heaney, what you're like leaving out of it is the fact that, but if they just cut everything off, right, then suddenly like they are no longer a decentralized chain at all, right? Because then if they want to be as fast, then they have to have the really strict validator constraints or like super high power one, So I think, TJ, you just put it excellently, dude. Yeah, it's basically, do people really care about decentralization or not, right? And unless it has like practical advantages, I feel like most of the time they won't really. But I do think, actually, and sorry, this is kind of a side thought, but what it really made me think about is like, what's going on right now with like the debate over Tether and USDC and what will happen after merge, it just points to like when it only matters when suddenly there is like a weakness and you find out there's a centralization of power. And then you're like, oh shit, this really does matter. Like I myself, I feel like have never really thought like it was like that. I've thought that things were sufficiently decentralized, but then I'm just thinking through this Tether and USDC impact on like Ethereum and its ability to go and do the merge. And I'm like, things will probably be fine, but there is a chance that they won't be fine. And there's no like, it's totally, you're totally at the mercy of this like centralized entity, right? Who are at the mercy of tons of other people, not necessarily like bad entities, but just all these people with a stake in this network and how it moves. And there's not a perfect system to decide. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah, could you maybe outline the issue with USDC and USDT a little more?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, it's just basically the idea that like the Ethereum's about to go through the merge and they're still going to have like ETH Classic going, right? And then they're also going to have
Tether. It's ETH1 and ETH2, right?
Yeah, sorry, ETH1 and ETH2. And so, there's the idea that basically because Tether and like USDC are centralized entities, like whatever they say is valid with regarding to the USDT or the USDC they issue is valid. So they could basically, say like, all right, we're only going to keep value of the existing stuff on, ETH2 instead of on ETH1. And then users are kind of fucked. They can't really make a decision themselves. Does that make any sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've never dug into the merge that much, but it's kind of crazy that they expect everyone to just move over to ETH2. It seems like they should have just created a new chain and then people move over, like kind of, I guess, consensually. And then like slowly, like everyone can move the USDC and the USDT over, right? Instead of just being like, okay, at this point it's only ETH2, and now they're, I don't know, potentially risking that.
Wait, just
they
to
probably
be clear,
just didn't want to double the market of like ETH or something.
Just to be clear, like I'm like Tether and Circle have obviously figured out a way where it's not going to be an issue, but it's just like the fact that people are worried about it is kind of insane in my view.
How do you know they figured something out?
I think, well, I don't know for sure. Sorry, but the Tether CEO, was like, it's going to be seamless to be able to transition and choose which one you're on.
So,
yeah.
So is the premise there that if something like a liability like Tether, which is, it's an off-chain entity that unilaterally issues a token on chain, right? So they can decide wherever that token lives and where it doesn't live. So are you saying that a Tether and a Circle, what they're basically doing is they're offering operability on both ETH1 and ETH2 per user, and whichever way the user chooses, the other token on the chain that the user is not using gets burnt, or how does it work?
Dude, I have no idea. I literally just was reading about it this morning, and then I saw the Tether CEO come back and be like, no, like this is going to be seamless. I'm trying to find the tweet right now.
So I think this brings up like a more interesting question. Like my guess is the calculus here is, and again, this is why ultimately at the end of the day, it's always social consensus, right? With these human systems, it doesn't matter if it's a fucking blockchain. See, in this scenario, I think the bet that's being made is the Ethereum Foundation put in a lot of research, time, and resources into upgrading the chain, and the
It's
premise
not priced
is,
in, bro.
the premise
Merge,
is
bro.
that
Sorry.
all good, bro. The premise, I think, is look, we have demonstrated to the market that this is something that is adaptive for the future of Ethereum. And for all of you bag holders out there, whether you're existing miners or if you're users or if you're fucking ETH whales, you're in the ICO, this is the right way to go because this is long-term more sustainable. And so the bet I think people are making is that the social consensus is sufficient such that the miners do in fact start validating the new chain. If the miners start validating the new chain and mostly abandon the old chain, then I think everything else kind of falls into line, right? Like Tether and Circle, they're like, all right, man, if ETH2 is the one that's more secure because all of the miners are switching to validators and they're going over there, then we kind of look like cucks if we're issuing our tokens on ETH1. And I think the kind of idea is social consensus has been sufficiently generated by the hype and the years of work being put into ETH2 that it will in fact be the chain that benefits from more security. And as soon as that happens, everything else kind of trickles in. But I don't know. I mean, I think this is one of the things that's so fascinating about blockchains is like there is this idea of voting with your feet and forking shit, right? And you just don't know until it happens.
Yeah, that's also kind of the answer to like the person who's like, there's a million blockchains. Why are any of them valuable? It's like, well, everyone collectively believes in ETH2 versus ETH1 or BTC versus like a million BTC forks. And I guess people basically are just assuming that ETH2 is what everyone will, I guess, believe in. And then also, I think everyone's just trusting that the exchanges will do the common sense thing, and then everything will go smoothly. And I guess Galloy Capital is just pointing out there's a lot of edge cases and areas where like maybe everyone just doesn't trust ETH2 and the ETH Foundation, which could run amok. Like, so it's definitely interesting.
Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, dude.
It might be helpful. Like, I mean, a lot of the people who watch our podcast, right, are like friends and family. It might be helpful to give a little background on the merge itself for them too, because like, I mean, we all understand it, right? But I think like we don't have to teach them what it is. But I feel like we're talking about such an esoteric thing, like in crypto, that maybe
it's true. It's true.
People. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shake, why'd you have to reveal our viewership, bro?
Friends and family.
We have our family is just hundreds of thousands of people.
My dad's
we have
who knows what is going on.
We have big clan families out here.
Yeah, honestly, it's really tough to start a podcast unless you have 100,000 family members. Then it's just cake.
I know, but and also I don't know if we're already deep to rewind, but
I think Teach can give a quick rundown of the merge as our resident.
I feel like this is my
Eve
role
Maxey.
in the podcast is to be like, wait, like let's check, are we too esoteric? And I kind of feel like we're starting to get there.
Yeah, let's simplify it. Let's simplify it for Kat at Kava Social, who might be tuning in. Can you explain the merge?
If Kat's tuning in, we're gonna go back and actually explain what this rancid merge is. So here's the deal. So Ethereum is a blockchain right now. It comes to consensus by a whole bunch of computers deciding what happened on the chain in the last block. Right now, Ethereum, sort of like Bitcoin, comes to consensus via proof of work, which basically means that a whole bunch of parties spend some energy and solve math problems. And when they solve those problems, to mine a block or secure a block. And they get a reward for that. So they get some BTC. Ethereum works the same way right now. So spend energy, set up some machines, solve math problems, and then you get a reward for providing what we call security to the network. But Ethereum decided to go a different direction. And honestly, I don't exactly know why. I suppose it was something around capital efficiency and moving away from the bad, dirty energy narrative. But nevertheless, the merge is basically a transition from proof of work to a consensus mechanism called proof of stake. So whereas proof of work, those that receive the rewards of the network spent energy and solved math problems with huge data centers in the physical world, proof of stake, all it requires is for those same validators to stake a whole bunch of the native token, which in this case would be Ethereum. And the more you stake, the more money you stake, the more likely you have the right to secure a block and get the reward. The merge has been, I don't know. I mean, when was the merge first talked about? 2018, 2019? Probably 2018, right? I mean, it's been...
I think Vitalik said he's been like thinking, like planning it for even longer.
Jesus.
Like when did Ethereum come out? 2015. So yeah, I think he's
Sounds
been
right.
planning it for since a year or two into ETH being on live on mainnet. But I think what's important to say too is a big I don't know if this is actually true, but a reason kind of from the outside that there's a lot of outside pressure on. There's this narrative that blockchains waste energy, right? And we can get into that or whatever. We don't have to, but a lot of Ethereum bag holders are they're really excited about this because hopefully they can change the narrative around Ethereum's consensus mechanism because it just uses less energy, right? When you compare them side by side. So to the average person, I think that's one of the most important things is just that this stops the energy, the environment killer narrative around ETH, hopefully.
Right. So the merge, I mean, to Shake's point, if Vitalik was indeed contemplating this shift to proof of stake for since 2015, the merge has kind of turned into this meme, right? Because it's always coming, it's always next year, it's always this kind of very bullish transition for the value of the chain, whether it's for sustainability reasons, or it increases security, or it increases capital efficiency. It was always kind of this event which was at the end of the tunnel, but it seemed to always be delayed because there were complications. And many people were like, it's never actually going to happen. Ethereum's going to stay proof of work consensus forever. But it appears that we're right kind of on the cusp here. I think it went to testnet on Goerli fairly recently, or maybe early August. And I think they're saying by the end of August, it should be shipped, which is why we're talking about all the complications of the merge.
Also, the part is they're trying to make it migrate from the ETH1 to ETH2, right? So everything transitions over, and so instead of just creating a new blockchain, it's well, the ETH1's running, and then you can move over to ETH2 and redeploy everything. It's they're almost, I guess, kind of trying to coerce people into using ETH2. Coerce is a bad word, but as much as possible, they're trying to make it seamless for ETH1 users, and so that's what's complicating things. Because then all the USDC and USDT, which are wrapped assets on ETH1, but now there's ETH2 as well as ETH1 potentially. It's then you just doubled the amount of USDT and USDC, and what are USDC and USDT going to do, right? Which one are they going to respect? And then if say something goes wrong with ETH2, does anything goes wrong with the merge, does the USDC and USDT, do they respect the ETH1 claims, or do they respect the ETH2 claims? So it's just I guess when you start getting into all the integrations, all the nitty gritty of what's going on, it just gets more complicated, which is what this Galloway guy or girl was fudding ETH2 about. Honestly, it's not even FUD. It's just honestly pretty interesting questions.
Yeah, dude, I think it's fascinating, dude. I agree. I think it's a really smart question. I actually I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm not nearly smart enough for that, but I think some of the points that he makes are really interesting. I mean, he also talks about Ethereum Classic. I don't know. I feel like he's asking the questions that should be a really core part of it, because I wasn't even really thinking about the way you said, Heaney, in terms of why it's different from them not just building a new chain. But yeah, I don't know what the actual transition process is going to be once the merge goes live. Are you suddenly just operating on the proof of stake network, or does there have to be bridges or stuff to move from the proof of work to proof of stake?
Honestly, it's crazy to me. I bet you less than 1% of people in crypto understand what they're supposed to do or how to do it. I don't have huge ETH bags, so maybe that can be my cope for not understanding it deeply enough. But I guarantee no one understands how it's working, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe less even than that, right? It's like what I was just talking about, that point where Tej was how do you guys attempt to quantify the security of a blockchain or protocol? And I was oh, if people I trust say it's good, ape in. That's everybody, bro. I would argue even the bankless guys who are super into this shit, they're doing that. They're trusting people to some degree, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's so fucking technical, and esoteric that there's like a ton of trust going on. And I don't know, I was reading some of the Galloway Capital, and they're coming at it more from like a trade perspective here. If I want to pull this back up, I do think this is pretty cool. But there's a lot of uncertainty, and like as we speak right now, right, ETH is up ETH is up massively off the lows. It's up almost 100%. Yeah, 70%. And so there's a lot of like speculation around this, but I think we're all kind of like on the same boat where we're like, man, maybe like we're just kind of like questioning it, right? Like, but there's just a ton of like layers of complexity here. I don't know. That's a super vague statement, but yeah.
Ultimately, like the exchanges are going to have a ton of this like weight in what actually ends up happening.
Yeah, clearly.
Like if Coinbase and FTX are like, you just have ETH2 now. Like, I don't even know if they're going to give you ETH1 and ETH2. They're like, you have ETH2 now, then everyone owns ETH2. So
that's what happened with the DAO hack, dude. That's what happened with the DAO hack too, isn't it?
On the exchange, I don't know what happened on the exchange.
Yeah, the exchanges are basically going to decide what happens with the merge.
So I mean, this is exactly what I was going to say. I think this is why, like we can't just be in a state of the world where the merge is around the corner and most people don't know which chain they're going to have, their assets on, right? Ultimately, I think what is going to happen is like it's going to be driven by first miners, and the exchanges are going to try to get a gauge on which way miners are going to go, because the exchanges are in the business of providing a good user experience to their users. They're going to go to the place that has more economic security. So the Coinbases and the FTXs are going to decide what to do, and you're going to get an email, and that's what you're going to do, I think.
Yeah. So I guess, honestly, this FUD is probably... I shouldn't call it FUD. It's not FUD. It's good criticism. Lucas, one way to think about it is like
the screen share. Sorry.
What the
I want to show this thing afterwards.
What FTX and Coinbase are going to do. And if they're going to do ETH2, then basically all Americans are going to do ETH2.
Yeah.
And I guess he brought up a good point that like in Asia, where a lot of the miners are, they're naturally maybe more in favor of ETH1 because they're running the miners. So maybe you have this weird thing where like some Asian exchanges choose to support ETH1, and then it's like more Asians end up holding ETH1, and then Americans are all with Coinbase, and Coinbase likes ETH2, so Americans like ETH2.
Yeah, it's also kind of in that vein. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of these CeFi companies that are currently in bankruptcy proceedings, where the assets of the company, as well as kind of the portals and the exchanges, are held in receivership. My guess is the previous principals can't, for example, like do operating activities in Celsius or Voyager right now. So Celsius and Voyager are probably going to hold ETH1 assets and not have done the technical implementation to bridge onto ETH2 for the merge. So I feel like that's just a deep collateral damage of the merge happening right at this time, right after the CeFi disasters. I bet there's like so many interesting permutations of horseshit that people have to deal with over the next few months.
Wait, that's a really good point, dude. But is that like, is there not what, like that would just basically be if they had like validators or nodes. They must have somebody on it, I would hope.
I would hope too, but like, do you guys remember that bit where Three Arrows, the founders absconded, and the Three Arrows assets went into receivership, which is just basically a step in the bankruptcy process after default, effectively. And the receivers weren't savvy enough to execute on Three Arrows Starkware warrants, right? So they were due a whole bunch of Starkware tokens, which has a non-trivial value. And because the receivers didn't know what they were doing, they didn't signal that in time, right? And then the warrants expired, right? Which cucked the users pretty badly because those are their assets. Like, I wonder how many things like that happen with all of these, like the BlockFis. I guess BlockFi was recovered, but Celsius and Voyager, like going through the merge, like there's a lot of technical work that has to be done on the back end there to ensure that like all of those assets are compliant and things are working, like whether it's on the validation side or whatever. I just wonder like how much weird stuff comes out of that.
That's definitely an interesting fringe thing to think about. This is fringe theory episode, basically.
Okay, I got some real alpha now. Took us a while.
Great.
Alpha
Perfect.
alert.
Please.
Okay. I think if you think there's any chance that miners keep running basically a chain based on ETH1, then you should definitely self-custody your tokens before the merge. Because basically what ETH Foundation is saying is that like when the merge happens, you don't have to do anything because the current state is just going to be controlled. It's just going to go into ETH2 and it'll just keep swimming. But what happens is what if there's enough miners that keep running the same chain in a different direction with the and start running its own state? And if that's worth something, basically if you're self-custodying, you get double the value. You'll be holding ETH1 and ETH2.
Yeah,
but if you're doing it on the exchange and Coinbase is like, we only believe in ETH2, they might not give you the ETH1.
That's the alpha, bro. That's exactly what happened with Bitcoin Cash. You get free money. Like
that is some.
Again, I'll dumb it down. Like they're forking the chain, so like there's going to be 2 chains with, and if you have one Ethereum, now you have one ETH2, one ETH1.
Yeah,
and like the miners will I would guess, just complete speculation, conjecture. I would guess that the miners try to pump the ETH1 coin. Somebody's gonna try to pump that shit. Like
with the degen,
and there probably won't be like I don't even know if they'll have like derivatives, right? Like maybe they probably will have them spun up pretty quickly just to get volume. But
it's honestly good timing anyway to play your shit off exchanges because I'm sure you guys saw, but Europe has gotten very, very serious about AML KYC on literally all transactions over a few cents. And it looks like some of that regulation is coming our way too. So in a year, it might be the case that to withdraw from exchange to a self-custodied wallet, you're going to have to AML KYC. So yeah. the alpha is good and the timing is even better.
It's crazy to me. No one I'm not super deep in the ETH CT, but I feel like no one's told me to do that. Maybe most people don't self-custody. So
yeah, why? But no, that's the thing. They don't want anyone else to have the alpha, right?
Yeah, maybe we should post about it. Spread the alpha.
Levers alpha.
Shake, will you pull back up that ETH merge website? Because I'll tell you what the biggest FUD about the ETH merge is. It's right on that website. If you put it back up on the side. It's pretty crazy what they're trying to do. There's also going to be 3 Ethereums, right? ETH Classic, ETH1, and merged ETH. All right. If you scroll down a little bit.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Keep doing. Oh yeah. Scroll up. Yeah, to the questions or whatever. Yeah, misconceptions, and then look at all the misconceptions. It's going to make it faster. False. Like all these misconceptions are way out there in the public like narrative, and most people have no idea. It's going to make it cheaper. False. But like a lot of people think all of this stuff, because they're just not really paying any attention. And then it's going to merge, and then they're like, wait, this is the exact same experience. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, bro. This is such a good point. I mean, so what is it like from like a middle curve perspective? Is the only thing that's like bullish here is like, that it's gonna that saves energy, basically. I mean, I know there's like the philosophical reasons behind doing proof of stake versus proof of work, but like other than that,
no, there's I think that's one of them. I think the other
TPS doesn't increase or anything. I didn't even know that.
So I think the other piece is, and I think this makes sense, is capital efficiency. So if you think about what happens when you're mining a POW chain, right? You're a miner, you have a whole bunch of inputs, energy, ASICs, land, whatever, labor. You get your BTC, right? And what do? You immediately sell it for cash so you can pay down your suppliers, right? And so there's this natural sink there, which is capital inefficient. I think proof of stake, when you all is required for you to have the right to mine a block or to validate a block, is for you to stake value. And then when you do in fact get the block reward, or you get the TX fees from that block, you get ETH back. There's not a natural mechanism that would make you a forced seller, right? And so I think it's just like a tighter feedback loop for a chain, which is
like
I think why you see. I mean, if the only it
basically is what we're talking about, right?
But like it wouldn't if the only reason for going POS was environmental reasons, that would not sufficiently explain the reason why every single blockchain on Earth is POS as opposed to POW.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, did you guys listen to the Up Only with Zuko or whatever, the Zcash guy? Oh, dude, incredible episode of Up Only. But he talked a lot about this because Zcash is going to proof of stake, and he was talking about how like there's like this economies of scale thing where if you want to validate the network and like get the block rewards, if you have like $1,000, like you can't really buy like mining rigs, right? Or at least it's not going to be profitable. But once you have like $1 million, like it's like increasingly profitable every extra dollar that you invest, right? Because like you have like the warehouse bot, for example, and you have all this like equipment. But proof of stake, it's like more democratic kind of in a way where like anybody can just I thought TJ winced when I said democratic. It's like anybody can just put their coins in. I swear you made a face, but it wasn't on purpose. But but anybody can just put their coin, like if I want to invest in like Bitcoin mining, like what do I buy? Like a stock of a Bitcoin mining company, right? But if I want to just validate on Solana, which is proof of stake, I just pick a validator and I make 6%. And then if I have 1 million Solana coins, I make 6%. Or if I have 1 Solana coin, I make 6%. Like it's just, there's like there's like better economies of scale essentially. Like it's like a flatter curve. Yeah.
That's a much better reason than the one that I just gave.
I like both. I thought both your reasons were very informative.
I mean,
to be honest,
I
I've
like
never
the
thought about it
fundamentals.
from that perspective.
Yeah, but like let's be honest, dude. Like Vitalik wants the coin to go up in price, you know. So we gotta, you gotta have less sellers,
Dude, Vitalik,
more buyers.
Vitalik doesn't.
Vitalik's not Vitalik's name on this podcast. We could not do that, dude.
He's not working on
Vitalik,
Ethereum. He's not working on Ethereum anymore. He's working on extending human life and reading Balaji's network state.
I guess okay. Let's keep it interesting and stop smearing Vitalik's name.
I like Vitalik for the record.
For the record, we like Vitalik.
We're the Levers podcast are Vitalik enjoyers. So
Levers is bullish and enjoy Vitalik.
Yeah, we got to put out a tweet this week saying that.
Okay, what do we think? ETH1, or let's call the proof of work chain after the merge that keeps running ETH. What do we think it gets valued at?
When?
After the merge, like a day after the merge.
Immediately?
Yeah. Because that's how much money
that's a
you'll be
good question.
That's how much money you'll be making by self-custodying. Like if it goes to zero immediately, then you'd have made nothing self-custodying. But if it trades at, even if it trades at ETH, what's ETH Classic at?
It's like, I feel like it's like 130.
Dude,
you make an extra 10% if ETH1 POW trades to ETH
Classic is at
$37. ETH Classic is at 37. Yeah.
Okay, still.
I want to say ETH1,
Yeah,
the
bro.
POW chain after the merge is like 90.
dude, I feel like probably before this tweet was made by whatever this guy's name is, and then suddenly it became a huge narrative, it was a lot less. And now I feel like it's definitely gonna, like, this is gonna take over in the next few weeks. I feel like just because it is like there's a huge value opportunity just from literally doing nothing. But
there's also just like that beautiful, irresistible contrarianism to it, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty. I mean, the fact that even Vitalik engaged with it, like, it's pretty nuts. And dude, he even like questions what's the CEO of Tether again? Paulo Arduino or whatever. He's like, what is their incentive for not making clear right now how they're handling this, right?
I was just gonna note, like, dude, this ETH Classic pump like already happened. I don't know if any of you guys follow his socket trades, but like he's like was been shilling this thing and it's up like tremendous off the lows, 180%. So it's like if you look at ETH Classic versus ETH, Like it's just like ETH is ripping and ETH Classic is ripping against ETH. It's like fucking insane right now.
Dude, that's what I also like. How much do you think? What do you think will be more valuable, ETH Classic or Proof of Work ETH?
Proof of work ETH. But I mean, I'm kind of just going on what that guy said, but I agree. Like, because there's like more value on the chain. There's like taps and shit, even though it'll be like I think the word he used was like DeFi pandemonium. I mean, dude, are you guys talking about this in Maker? Like, TJ, I'd be curious, like, what the insider combos are like. Are they like, dude, we don't fucking know?
The protocol engineering lads, I'm sure have. I mean, if any of these questions needed answers, that's the first place I would go. I'm sure that they have a strategy, but honestly, I don't really know.
Dude, are you sure that they have a strategy, TJ? Because I'm pretty sure nobody has a strategy for the merge.
My guess is it's actually that crazy, bro? Have a strategy.
Like, what if we're all just like assuming it's gonna work? I mean, obviously they're not just assuming, like they have to do something, but like, bro, that's kind of what happened with 3AC, right? Like, I know it's a completely different situation, but like everybody just assumed like these guys are rich, bro. Like they're gonna pay us back. And then it just blew up the whole fucking crypto market. Like, what if that's happening now where they're like, oh, don't fade Vitalik, bro. Like, merge isn't priced in, bro. Like, it's going to be good. And then, like, just like everything's fucked, you know? All of DeFi on ETH is just completely wrecked. Like, I don't know.
I mean, if I would like, okay, if Sol was about to go through this, you'd basically you'd have to decide, are you going to run 2 versions of all your bots? So I'm sure the Maker team runs liquidators. Like, are you going to commit to both versions, or do you just commit to one and you just leave the other one to basically rot and like not count it for everything? You don't even care what happens. I assume most of like the OG ETH projects are just going to keep running their bots against the ETH2 network. And if anything, the merge is probably almost like everything's set up to go along with the merge. So there's going to have to be, it's like, you're going to have to go out of your way to support this POW chain. So it's probably not even that big a deal for like the projects, if I had to guess.
Dude, and this gets back to what we were discussing at the beginning of the episode, which is it's also like all the layer 2s, right? They probably don't have any option. They just have to go with the merge, right? That's like way beyond my technical knowledge, so I have no idea. But right, like because they're completely dependent on Ethereum to settle, right?
Yeah, I think to basically probably opt out of the merge, they would have to proactively make changes. Like I'd be shocked if it's not like set up so that like users of ETH1, they just are using the new POS chain for the most part. So like you're gonna have to actively opt in to the POW chain.
It looks like if you look at this chart on the right for the viewers here, it's basically a chart that's going straight down. But this is like the this is Nansen, the ETH balances coming off exchanges, probably because people are thinking the same thing as us, right? It's like, I mean, it's actually really considerable amount. What is this,
dude? Nice analytics.
21 million ETH has come off exchanges in the past 3-4 months, or whatever.
Dude, yeah, we got to get everything off of everything. Like, what are we even thinking?
Yeah,
just buy Sol, baby. Buy Sol and relax. That's what I'm doing.
Dude, what we're thinking is we trust SBF more than we trust ourselves.
Exactly,
definitely trust SBF.
Don't fake totally, dude.
So one more thing to bring up, because I think this this idea of coercion is kind of interesting, and those that kind of rebuff the coercion. So when the DAO hack happened, right, like there were no applications built in anything, right? So miners were like, we're forking the chain, we're securing the new chain, and ETH Classic and in isolation over there, and it was fine. But what happens here when the merge happens and you have all these applications living on the POW chain, and then one application is like, I'm gonna stay. Right. And the infrastructure is already set up. Like a user still uses their MetaMask. Like the user is realistically using that MetaMask because of that application, which might be successful as opposed to anything else. it's just kind of interesting to think about if there are stragglers, and those stragglers are applications with legitimate users. I mean, you could see like it's almost like two nation states emerging, right? The fork goes one direction, and a state, Florida, has seceded and goes the other direction. Different values, different principles, different applications. I mean, it's not out of the question at all.
Except if you're self-custodying, you get to be a citizen of both. You get dual citizenship.
The golden visa.
Yeah, exactly. So this podcast was supposed to be about L2 game theory, and it turned into the Levered Lads learn about E2 merge.
Bro. Not pricing, guys. Do we want to talk about L2s at all? Or are we just too down the rabbit hole now to go back?
Your mic was
I think
tweaking.
I think we're at a good spot. I'm proud of what we've built.
Yeah, honestly, I think we broke down the merge pretty well. For as well as we could have, considering we did no prep on it. And I'm happy to wrap it there.
Lucas, you're muted or something. Everyone's getting rugged.
Oh shoot, dude! I was on mute the whole time. Oh, I was saying Shake's camera's 5 seconds delayed, so his reactions. They were way behind. So yeah, I mean, dude, that was really informative for me. I'm sorry.
I'm so rugged, guys. I'm sorry.
Okay, on that note, shout out to the listeners for working through this with us. Hopefully you got something out of it, and if not, thanks for making it this far and humoring us as we work through it. If you have any suggestions on what you want us to talk about, feel free to DM us or something, and we can try to work it in. And as always, stay levered.
Stay levered indeed.